Is Wonder Woman the new Superman? We're breaking it down this morning. I'm Sasha Pearl Raver, and this is Screen Junkies News. To allay any concerns about their upcoming Wonder Woman film, Warner Brothers flew reporters all the way to London to visit director Patty Jenkins, who is currently working on final edits on the film. While showing reporters footage, she told a story about watching the 1978 Superman with her son. Jenkins said to IGN, quote, "When baby Clark lifts up the back of that car, my son stood up on the couch and did the Superman pose with his hands on his hips." She added, "Oh my God, all these years later, and look at that. That's how pure that movie is. I'm Superman. That's what the film did to me when I was 7, and then watching it with him all these years later, still, I'm Superman. I could be Superman. That's the movie I wanted to make for everyone, but for little girls too." So, will Wonder Woman be our generation's Superman, not just for little girls, but for everyone, including the DCEU? Well, with me to discuss is the incomparable Dan Murrell, Jay Washington, and over there on social, we've got Danielle Radford. All right, guys, I think we need to start by sort of breaking down the Superman that we grew up with, or I grew up with, I will say. I will date myself, Christopher Reeves, and what we have now with Man of Steel and Henry Cavill. So, where do you see sort of the Dawn of Justice Superman versus the Christopher Reeve Superman, Dan?
Well, Christopher Reeve was the one that I grew up with. I was born in '83, so he was still making, at that time, terrible Superman films. But
you can watch
1
the
and 2
early
I had.
ones.
Exactly. I watched the early ones. That's the ones that the 1 and 2, those are the ones that I really connected to. That was, the new Superman gets a lot of flack, and really what it is that they took that character in a different direction. I think that it's, and I've done it too. I think unfairly, you're never going to get out of the shadow of Christopher Reeve. He was so great, and he was that kind of 30s and 40s feel of Superman,
look at that.
where like he was truth, justice, in the American way. He was the Boy Scout. He was the symbol of hope. He was the best human being on the planet, which is ironic because he wasn't a human being. He was an alien. But he was that ideal. And with Man of Steel, they made the decision, Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder in conjunction, and everybody else involved with the movie, that they were going to kind of explore the darker side of that, the more tortured side of being able to save everybody on the planet, but not being able to save everyone on the planet, and this idea of struggling with your role in the world. That's not an illegitimate viewpoint, but I think that a lot of people didn't connect with it because this was not as hopeful of a vision of the character. So I think that's really when people say, oh, the Christopher Reeve Superman versus the DCEU Superman, it's really two separate takes on the character. Vastly different takes on the character.
They're vastly different, but also you have to think about what was at their disposal in 1978 versus what we have now. Like now you can destroy an entire city thanks to CGI. And that might not serve the character as well as maybe having him be, like you're saying, more hopeful, more about saving the human race. I don't know, Jay, what do you think?
I, too, grew up with the Christopher Reeve Superman, and I was forced to watch Superman 4 Quest for Peace with Nuclear Man. I just don't want to ever bring that up again. But, Danny, you're absolutely right. It was a truth, justice, the American way. it was always this with Superman. It was always this. We never saw this with Henry Cavill in Man of Steel.
Yeah,
he is he's the, I'm trying to get the world to accept me. When in Superman,
emo Superman,
he was very. Think about it. If you look at Batman v Superman, he was like, Lois, why don't they? I'm just trying to help.
Let's just take a bath together, baby.
I just want to help. I just want to help.
Yeah.
I got this hair. But that's what he was. So that there are, like you said, there is a parallel of two completely different Superman. The Christopher Reeve one set a standard. So, of course, everyone's going to hold that to the barometer. Let's never go to the Brandon Routh Superman because we won't act like that didn't happen.
Was that his fault or was that Bryan Singer's fault?
Well, in a weird way, I think that the Brandon Routh Superman is what led us to the Superman that we have now, because, the Brandon Routh Superman was more than an homage. It was Bryan Singer trying to recreate the Superman from the 70s, and it didn't work very well for any number of reasons. But I think that failure, in a weird way, is what pushed them toward where they went with Man of Steel, as far as they said, okay, well, we've done the take that worked in the 70s. People weren't so much about that. Let's explore this different facet of the character.
We can go darker now.
Did they go too far with that? I think a lot of fans think that they did. They're kind of in a no-win scenario because, like I said, Christopher Reeve just put such a stamp on that role that it showed through the Bryan Singer film, through Superman Returns. You can't just do that again.
Right.
So they were kind of in a no-win scenario. I think they went a little too far. I think that you could have kind of gone in the middle somewhere. But I don't admire or I don't envy that position, because where do you go?
Well, and you're talking about no-win scenarios, and I hate that to be the transition, but the truth is the DCEU has been in trouble, and we get a lot of flack for talking smack, but the truth is we all want the movies to be great, and we've been disappointed a number of times. And I feel like Wonder Woman is going to be our salvation. I truly believe. I mean, I wanted it to be Aquaman, but I feel like Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins, everything we've seen so far from the trailers, everything we've seen in terms of like the early stuff, the fact that they were like, hey, let's fly some journalists to London to watch a few minutes of footage in the editing room.
Right.
It shows a lot of trust. It shows that Warner Brothers is like, this is going to be the thing that puts us back on track.
Well, if you notice in Batman v Superman, they made her almost the focal point. Especially during that fight with Doomsday.
It was awesome.
When she came in with her shield.
And that soundtrack.
The soundtrack made it just everything.
Yeah.
It was like you forgot. You cared less about what Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill were doing. You were like, look at her right here with this pose. Until they came. And again, she's in the middle. It's like she's not even in the middle. She's in the front of the two of them.
Yeah.
Every pose you see, she's in the front of them.
That's badass.
She's always front.
I'm into it.
So I believe she's more the focal point of the DCEU than Superman.
Interesting. What do you think?
Well, yeah,
Dan?
I mean, they've set her up. They set her and Ben Affleck up as going forward. They are now the impetus behind the Justice League. Superman is not a factor at the moment. And what I really connect to in this quote is, I think the first clue you can get about what direction the film is going to take is kind of what the filmmaker's saying about their inspiration behind it. And with Zack Snyder, again, a lot of him, when you're talking about Man of Steel, a lot of him saying what he wanted to bring to it was a darkness, an edge.
Right.
That's what he thought was missing from a lot of comic book films, and that's what he brought. What I read here is Patty Jenkins saying, I remember this is a moment that connected with me, multi-generational, this moment of hope, this moment of aspiration, and I think that's what a lot of people think was missing from some of the earlier DC films. So if she can bring that, I think that's going to be something that a lot of people want in these movies.
Absolutely. Well, she's definitely setting it up to be aspirational, but one of the things that she also says is she talks a lot about like it being hopeful. So I wonder, based on what we're seeing here, based on all of the stuff that we've seen in the trailers, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's going to be light and fluffy. But where do you think tonally she's taking it? Do you think it's going to be along that Richard Donner Superman line, or do you think this is going to be more in line with what we've seen with Justice League and with BVS?
I think a little bit of both. You're going to see along the line of Justice League, BVS, because they have a plan.
Sure.
They have a format with everything. So you're going to see, again, the tone. You can look at it. It's a dark look. Even the Wonder Woman costume is a darker look. It's not the bright yellow and red that we're used to seeing from back in the day in the comic books. Right. It's brought down. The shades are brought down. I believe, though, she's going to make it where Patty Jenkins is going to make it where Wonder Woman is a strong warrior who, even from being on Themyscira with her mother giving her the advice, from when she goes to No Man's Land and then she runs into Chris Pine, she's going to have to learn how to interact with people she's never interacted with,
right,
but still keep herself, her essence, her being strong, being this powerful warrior throughout it all.
Yeah.
And Chris Pine is going to actually be broken down, which I'm going to laugh at.
Me too. And I love the fact that it's not going to be a Chris Pine movie. He's there and it's going to be great and we love Chris Pine. But I feel like what she's really saying here is she's giving little girls and young people in general, and maybe adults hopefully, something to aspire to. Will we have a new role model by the time we walk out of this movie, Dan?
Well, I hope so, although I think there's a lot of real-life role models that I'd put above Wonder Woman or any comic book character for that
absolutely.
matter.
Listen, Ruth Bader Ginsburg can only sit on the court for so long. She's getting old, she's getting tired.
Sure, why not? We keep her there.
We need other Wonder Women.
But what I think is important is that, I like that she is prioritizing the fact that everyone should have a hero.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just guys like me that grew up with Superman. Everyone should have a hero. Everyone should have someone that they look up to, and everyone should be able to find somebody that shares traits with them. That could be appearance, that could be background, that could be philosophy. But I think it's important in culture in general to find heroes that you connect to. And if Wonder Woman does that in an entertaining way and gives people somebody to look up to that maybe they didn't have before, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Look, I can't wait.
There's going to be critics regardless.
Of course.
What this movie is good, bad, or there's people going to have negative say-sos and all that. But this movie is set out to be what it's to be, a role model, something, a guide to people to get a new role model. A lot of people have never, first of all, you get Wonder Woman on the big screen for the first time in her own full-length movie.
Yes.
That says a lot. They've been trying, they could have done this years and decades ago. Now it's being done. It's being done by a director who can do this movie justice, no pun intended.
Yeah.
This movie is going to set a new role model for, like you say, men, women, young, old. They're like, oh my God, look how dominant she is. And it's not just because of a superpower.
Right.
It's not just because of, oh, she's a warrior. Because she's a dominant individual who has her convictions. She believes in herself. That's what people need.
So I have to say, this is the movie that I'm most excited for in the DCEU, even taking away my Jason Momoa Aquaman. And I really do hope that it's fantastic. But going back to Superman, there are so many Superman movies with Christopher Reeve and so many Superman moments that I love. And we took to Twitter and we asked you guys, what are some of your favorite Superman moments? Hopefully, by the way, we will be asking you very soon, what were some of your favorite Wonder Woman moments? But let's go over to Danielle. Danielle, what did the peoples have to say?
Well, BG Spider-Man loves the helicopter scene.
Oh, of course, which we showed here.
And said it was unforgettable.
Yeah.
Me personally, I was always a big fan of Lois and Clark. I love that show. I don't care. Lois and Clark was great. And during that scene where she was Ultra Woman and there was Ultra Lucille, fantastic.
And wait, who were the other people that scene? Shelley Long and who?
Oh, shoot. I can't remember the name of the other lady, but it was two really, really great female comedians. And it was so funny. I love Lois and Clark. I like Madcap Hijinks.
Did you love the fact that Dean Cain showed up in Supergirl?
Every time!
It makes me so happy. I know, it's the best. Do you guys have any favorite Superman moments?
I always, there's those two words that Christopher Reeve always said, a friend. Like, who are you? I'm a friend. Like, that's always, like, the fact that that's what he used to kind of lay people's... And that's what Superman should be. I think that's the defining characteristic of Superman is, like, who are you? I'm a friend.
I'm a friend, yeah.
And that's what I always... That whole balcony scene with him and Margot Kidder when she's interviewing him for the first time, and just that interplay between those two, I liked a lot.
I love the interactions with him and Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. Those were iconic interactions.
Yeah.
Like, Gene Hackman was this snarky man. We never saw Lex become what he becomes in the comic books, but he was just diabolical in the way he delivered it on screen. I always love those.
Yeah.
God, those are good. I'm sorry, in Superman 2 where he rolls into the fire and doesn't get burned, and that's how Margot Kidder figures out, like,
and Niagara Falls, yeah.
You're supposed to, but you don't. That will always be, like, such a moment for me. But I gotta say, you guys, I'm super hyped on this. Do we think that this is going to be a major shift for the DCEU? Is this going to be the movie that we keep thinking the next movie is going to be? Will this be that movie that we keep waiting for?
You go first.
I think that this movie, I hope, is going to be kind of singular. And I think that this is going to be different than what we've seen so far, partly because Wonder Woman doesn't have the baggage cinematically that Superman and Batman have. You don't have to measure up to any other iteration of Wonder Woman as far as movies go.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
They have way more freedom to do their own thing, which is great. You can really take this character in an interesting way. However, is this going to signal a tonal shift across the entire DCEU? I don't think so, just because you have Zack Snyder doing Justice League, and that has its own kind of tone.
Yep.
And those heroes have a kind of established tone. So, I think this is going to be very singular. I think it's not going to be like anything that we've seen, but I don't think it's going to shift the entire tone of the universe.
Yeah, this is an origin story movie. So this is set before everything else. This is like, to cross universes, this is like Captain America, the First Avenger. I'm going to shift universes but that's what it is. You're getting the origin of Wonder Woman, where she comes from, how she gets to America for the first time. This isn't, whereas Justice League is already set.
Sure.
It's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Aquaman, we have to hope James Wan and them do a great job with that. Great cast already lined up. Justice League, that's what we all do. I mean, I don't care who you are, because of the history is what you do.
Sure.
Wonder Woman sets its own standard because it's a set-alone movie.
Yeah.
It isn't. It's in this DCEU, but it's not a part of this as right now, because it's an origin story. We're not going, oh, who is this woman? We've already seen her in Batman v Superman. We know who she is. We know what she does.
And she was awesome, by the way. In Batman v Superman,
she was awesome.
Yeah, one of the best parts of that movie.
So we know what she does.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a great movie in itself. I just hope everyone doesn't try to group every movie going forward into Wonder Woman, because you can't.
You can't, but what you can do is you can set a new standard, and I really do hope that that's what this movie does. I personally can't wait for it, and we want to know, what do you guys think? Are you excited? Do you think this is going to shift the way DCEU moves forward? Is this the new Superman? Let us know in the comments below. You can always tweet us at SJ News. Make sure to like and subscribe, and you can always click here for more Screen Junkies. We'll see you soon.